Well, we are such interesting beings, aren't we? What do you think? We have a physical body and we're also spiritual beings. They are not separate from each other, which means that what we do with one or how we treat one impacts the other as well. Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, says this in the late 1800s. Where would you draw the line between spirit and the material when there is no evidence that God has placed such boundaries? So I had this idea to talk about spiritual health. And I thought, well, let's play around and see if there are some correlations between the things we do for our physical well-being and what we do for our spiritual well-being. And I thought of 5 ways. So between the connection between the physical really and the metaphysical. So we'll start with eating. I don't know, that's the first one that came to my mind. We've all been taught and we know that we should be eating nutritious food, right? We pay attention to what we put into our bodies. Most of us are pretty selective about what goes into our mouths. We know that it's important to have a variety of foods and try to eat, local and organic whenever possible. So just like food, everything that we see and hear also comes in. We are careful about what goes into our mouths, but what about what we take into our hearts and minds? Do we listen to the radio, television, internet news, Facebook, and just take everything in? Are we an open door for anything that's going on around us? How selective are we about what we expose ourselves to? Do we choose the stories that we're going to follow? Do we know when to say stop? We've had enough. I don't know about you, but there's some meals that, come around a few times a year, and it's like Thanksgiving or Christmas is like, okay, that's enough. I have to stop. But do we do that with everything else that we are exposed to, with everything that is coming into us? 100 years ago, if we wanted to find out something about some information about something, we would have to look long and hard to find something out, right? This was true locally and even more so if it was some worldwide event. Even in the 70s, when I was living in Africa, I would send my parents a letter once a month, and it took 6 weeks to reach them. There was no cell service, there was no email. So the circumstances of those times limited the information that was available to us. But today, we can sit in front of a computer or a phone and read and read and listen and watch anything that is going on, what people are saying or doing anywhere on the planet. This makes it imperative that we consciously act as the gatekeeper for what comes in. We cannot unsee something. The challenge is not finding information as it was decades or centuries ago. The challenge now is screening the flood of information and misinformation that is out there. We can make a choice, just like we do with the food we eat. We do not have to swallow everything that comes our way. To stay spiritually healthy, we want to use our power of discernment to choose what we invite, what we allow into our minds and our hearts. Another thing we do for our physical well-being is sleep. So for our physical selves, sleep, we know, is a time to shut down, to rest our bodies and minds, to disengage from all of this. When we sleep, our brains rest from all the thinking, analyzing, decision-making, planning, everything that occupies it while we are awake. So where is the correlation spiritually? How do we do this? Well, prayer, meditation. What happens when we pray? We often close our eyes, find a quiet place. We disengage from everything outside of ourselves. We separate ourselves from the busyness of the day. We focus inwards, resting in the silence. We realign ourselves with our divine identity, as Linda Martellowitz says. When we rest our busy minds, we come away mentally refreshed, and we are able to meet the activities of the day with peace and equanimity. So meditation and prayer are a way to spiritually rest. What about staying active? Well, we know that physical activity is essential for our well-being, that it impacts not only our bodies, but it's good for our emotions and our minds. So how would this look spiritually? Spiritual activity. Well, I thought, are we ready? Are we willing to relook at our beliefs? Are we able to move off of our old thinking and actively explore new ideas? It's healthy to move spiritually. Check out what people are talking about. Not only the people that you agree with, but particularly those you do not. Attempt to see other points of view. You will learn a lot by reading about or listening to people who do not hold the same beliefs or ideology you do. Having confidence in our beliefs is important, but remember, we can learn and grow from others. I think it was Mark Twain who said, "I never learned anything new by listening to myself." Everything we know now was once new to us. Being open-minded and non-judgmental allows us to gain valuable information. Different points of view help us grow, keeps our minds open and flexible. A different opinion today may result in a new perspective tomorrow. So keep active spiritually. Take a class, listen to a podcast, read a book. This keeps us spiritually healthy and resilient. Here's another thing for us to cultivate: balance. This is very important for our physical health. There are times of rest and times of activity, times to eat, times to digest. There are times to be outside, times to be in. Spiritual balance includes all aspects of life. As human beings, we are part of a changing world. Did you notice that? Sometimes things go the way we anticipate, sometimes not. The inner landscape is always moving from what we like to what we don't like, from pleasure to displeasure. Spiritual balance means that we are able to move from one to the other without judgment, without criticism. Is the emotional energy of your life balanced? Have you created opportunities to laugh and be lighthearted? Watch funny movies, play games. I know that you do this here. Is it once a week still on Friday to play games? Yeah. Our buoyancy, our lightheartedness is augmented when we can do these things with others. So ensure that you have made room in your life for lightness and joy. Laughter is good for our health. We know that. It also is good for us spiritually. It creates a lightness of spirit. It has many benefits, including giving us more energy and boosting our vitality. It strengthens and grounds us spiritually. What we also know about life is that sometimes things happen that do not make us happy. And it's important for spiritual balance to give ourselves time to acknowledge sadness, grief. Feeling our pain helps our recovery and aids in the healing process. It is often in these times we discover how strong we are spiritually. So building up our spiritual reserves helps us move through these times so that we experience the full spectrum of our humanity and we're strong in our spiritual equilibrium. The last one I'd like to share is connection. With our physical bodies, we know that everything works together. Our physical system is interconnected with and responsive to what we eat, what we breathe, what we wear, what we think, what we're feeling. All of these have an impact on our intricate, complex physical system. So spiritually, I'd like to look at two different kinds of connection, with others and with ourselves. So how are you connecting spiritually with others? It's important and healthy to be part of a community that gives you purpose and a place to contribute. We are naturally social beings that need companionship and a sense of belonging. How many of you, I know, many of you volunteer here, because I think there's coffee over there waiting for us after service, as well as in the larger community. Making this connection, giving our time and skills generously, is important for us spiritually. And yourself. How well do you connect with yourself? Alone time is critical to spiritual health. Do you find moments to take time for yourself daily? Do you put away the phone and enjoy doing something that brings you peace and joy? In 1890, Myrtle said this: "I delight in getting out into the garden or to walk in the woods. I love to touch a tree and feel that it was truly intelligent. I receive something very satisfying from close contact with nature. I know now that I was feeling and responding to the omnipresent Spirit of God, and that the abundant life of God was pouring out to me from everywhere, and that my hungry soul and body were drinking and rejoicing in it." We are so blessed to live where we do, surrounded by the ocean, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes, parks. Are we spending time outdoors every day? I just read this last week. I might not have it quite right, but it was something like this: "It's important to spend at least 15 minutes a day alone in nature. If you think you don't have the time, then you need to spend an hour." Spending time with yourself can just be a few quiet moments in the morning while you're enjoying your coffee or tea. It could be reading a passage that is inspiring or uplifting. Being quiet. Silence is therapeutic, calming, and relaxing. Again, from Myrtle Fillmore. Think of your organism as being the pure life and substance of Spirit made manifest. Keep your mind filled with joyous, constructive, beautiful, health-producing thoughts. Let's hear those words again. It's quite a good list. Keep your mind filled with joyous, constructive, beautiful, health-producing thoughts that maintain harmony in both mind and body. When your mind is peaceful, the healing energies flow through your whole being freely and abundantly. So I invite you to look at these 5 areas and take your spiritual pulse. See how you're doing. Spiritual nutrition, track what's coming in. Spiritual activity, be curious and open. Spiritual rest, take time in the silence. Spiritual balance, engage in the ebb and flow. And spiritual connection, reach out, reach in. Namaste.